Want to get more insight now on what it means to be a minority in a culture and the challenges that go with it. I talked about the issue with Kwame Dixon, assistant professor of African American Studies at Syracuse University.
The challenges for people of African descent in Latin America is to carve out their cultural, social, political, and identity space. Blacks in Brazil are the majority, if you will. However, blacks in Brazil oftentimes occupy, inferior positions in the political economy. They occupy inferior positions in the educational systems. So when we're thinking about minorities, we shouldn't just think about the numerical significance, but in terms of their cultural and political power.
You're mentioning inferior positions, you're talking about power, and so almost by definition, minorities are disenfranchised. In other words, it's hard to gain recognition for issues of unique importance to minorities because they're often not represented well in the government, as you pointed out, or in the media for that matter. You wrote about this a few years ago about Afro cinema in Latin America. Can you talk a little bit about that, and are things changing at all?
Well, certainly things are changing. And the article you were referring to, that article attempted to highlight some of the, as you put it, some of the challenges of being Black in Latin America. So with the media, for example, or the images of, for example, or you go to Brazil, or you go to Peru, or you go to Ecuador, it's the kind of images you have of African people, the negative image, the criminal, in Brazil, it's going to be the woman that's the domestic, that's always cleaning houses, or it's going to be the soccer player. And you really don't get a deeper textural image of Black people in the media. And moreover, for example, the job that you have, you will get very few Black people presenting the news, or very few Black women presenting the news. So you have a really one-dimensional image of what it is to be Black via the media's projection of Black people.
Well, and just to kind of amp off that, let's say we're having a news meeting. If someone of color is not there representing their point of view and talking about it, it's hard for their issues to percolate up. So I guess the question is, for those in power, is this a conscious effort to exclude minority groups, or does it just sort of happen because they're unaware?
Well, I think perhaps it's both. In one level, it's it begins with political power. It begins with education. If you exclude from the educational system, you can't move up to become a journalist, or you can't be a TV producer or director. So it's about how the society structures opportunities, and that's where back to your question, where the struggles of Black people come in, because the whole idea is to create an alternative, textured view of what it means to be Black in Latin America, and not just a football player.
You know, it's interesting because you talked about society structuring things, and you talked about a more textured, layered approach. How do you get society to move from where it is to the kind of description you just gave of a more textured, nuanced approach?
Well, I think it begins when you include people from the quote minority unquote group into the power structures. You just get a multiplicity of images when the group itself has some kind of voice in the projection of that voice.
Well, clearly talking about it is a important first step. So Kwame, we can't thank you enough for joining us today.
Sure. Thank you.